Well, hello, everybody. Again, this is Manny Aragon from the Wolf Workshop Center for Structural Performance, and today, welcome to today's installment of the 2014 Endurance Summit. Today, we're talking with a very interesting guy who I met about, 6 or 7 years ago when I first came down to the Orange County area, and he's got a really interesting and effective method. I'm going to probably butcher it here, Chris, but it's movement and kind of targeted, I suppose, neurological repatterning in addition to strengthening as well. Is that butchering it, Chris, or is that?
No, that sounds pretty good. Yeah, we simply go sometimes with just postural therapy.
There you go, postural therapy. So, yeah, I'm getting a little technical here. I'm also in the movement field, so yeah. Pardon me while I geek out. And anyway, so a little bit about Chris. Chris has been doing this for quite some time. He started out actually as a personal trainer and, was working with folks and helping them improve their, strength and probably lose weight and all that other cool stuff that personal trainers do. But like any a physical practice, people will come in with injuries and or perhaps sustain injuries during practice, and sometimes they go away easily, and sometimes they just don't, and there's nothing that can be done, it seems. People go to doctors, physical therapists, chiropractors, all kinds of different people, and they're not getting help. Now, some do, but a lot don't. So what do you do with the people who don't? And it just so happened that the facility that he was working at had a seminar, I suppose. It was an education event. And there was somebody there from the Egoscue method. And can you tell us a little more about that story, Chris?
Yeah, it was kind of a turning event for me. And, I'm like, well, this looks interesting. Let me go check this out. Didn't know anything about it. And first thing he does is this guy named Brian, who's in Portland, Oregon, and he picks a volunteer out of the audience. And she's a very fit aerobics instructor, and he brings her up in front of the group. And he just gets her up there, stand comfortably in front of the group, and he points at her right knee, and she's got pain there. She's got pain in that left shoulder, and she's got neck pain. And her jaw's just dropping as he's speaking. And I'm like, well, this is weird. What's this? It seems like, they had set this all up. And he began to explain and talk about, the position of the body, the posture. And he was just pointing out joints that were, out of alignment, most substantially. And it turns out she had pain in every one of those areas. And the key words for me were, you need to straighten before you strengthen. And I said, wow, I don't know how to straighten people. I'm searching my mind, and I'm like, that's I don't have that one. So it really is for me, and even in your field as well. It's step one. And I found that I was doing somewhat of a disservice for these people that were, out of alignment, on the edge of, pain and symptom. If I didn't have the tools to, help them get aligned and balanced first. So,
for sure, yeah, and that's.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
From there, I just studied as much as I could with him and eventually applied to the main facility in Del Mar back in late 2000 and, got accepted as a therapist down there. That was, back in 2000. So here we are.
Yeah, and that's, it's what you mentioned is huge. It's something that people don't, I'd say it escapes the conventional wisdom a lot, which is that, people think they can strengthen their way out of things, and it's
core strength.
Right, exactly. Well, you can strengthen your way out of a problem, and oftentimes the problem is not necessarily the strength or lack of strength, but it's an imbalance in strength, and simply strengthening a weak muscle, but not getting the tight muscle to release, through movement or whatever method you use. You've got to involve both sides of the equation there to really see success, and that's just been in my experience, and certainly, I mean, that's what you're all about. So, That's awesome. And so can you tell me a little bit more about what exactly is Egoscue and the Egoscue
Sure.
method, and what how does what's the philosophy, maybe a little bit of the history of it, and how it works.
Awesome. Well, I'll try to keep it short. But the original founder, Pete Egoscue, has got a pretty neat story. He was in the Vietnam War, and he was actually shot in the hip. And he, of course, came back home, went through his surgery, went through his rehab. And as you can imagine, I'm sure, as we look back on this, how much compensation you get from an injury like that. But he wound up still in a tremendous amount of pain, sciatic nerve pain, and didn't understand why. And they started talking about it being post-traumatic stress type stuff. And we've done the surgery, we've done the physical therapy, but his body was left completely out of balance. And he had one foot that turned out, a hip that went up, a knee that turned out. He loaded all his weight on the other side, and his spine was taking the punishment. So he, interestingly enough, he noticed this one day. I believe he was sitting on a desk and noticed his leg was just completely turned out to the side, and he, without thinking, moved it, made it look symmetrical with the other leg, and he felt better. And I guess that was the light bulb moment. He said, "What do I do?" I said, "Well, it's symmetrical with the side that doesn't hurt." So he started studying, exercise, stretching, anatomy, biomechanics, and it took him a little bit, but he was able to get himself out of pain, and then his friends out of pain, and then his friends' friends out of pain, and we've now had clinics for 20 some odd years. So that's kind of the background story. On a deeper level, we keep it as I've learned a lot more about the Rolfing and gone through my series myself. There's so many similarities. It's very neat. We look at the entire structure of the body from head to toe. Of course, the symptom site is not always the point of origin, and quite frankly, it's generally not. So what we are looking for are compensation patterns throughout the entire body and how they're relative to the symptom or lack of performance, and how best, from an exercise standpoint and a retraining the muscle standpoint, how best to retrain the correct pattern, get the person out of pain, get the performance level to where we want to see it, get back to the activities that we want to get back to. So we do a very simple postural photos, a long intake on history, accidents, injuries, lifestyle, and we do a gait analysis of palpation. Everything we really need to do to fully understand the whole complexity of that compensation pattern throughout the body. And then we sequentially develop a set of exercises to start to correct the imbalances. And it's a daily practice, which appeals to some, not everybody. And it's, and I remember our first session together, it's neat because, and I'm sure you see this as well, things happen immediately. When we activate the right muscles, when we get some of those tight muscles to loosen and work again, when we change shoulder positions, drop hips down, people instantly feel a difference. It's not a magic wand. Of course, it's a lot of work and a lot of time to make that permanent, but it's a lot of fun.
For sure. And, I don't know what it was, 6 or 7 years ago when we met, and I came in, I had, for the listeners out there, I went in, I met Chris, and what's common in the kind of wellness industry is when you meet somebody, you want to kind of experience their work and get a sense for, one, if you understand it, two, if you think it's useful, and then, how, you kind of add it to your quiver in terms of referring out or recommending it to people. But what my experience is that, like you mentioned, Chris, I got immediate results. Like I could feel immediate results in my body. Now, I'm, and maybe the average person does too. I'm when you've been doing this type of work for a long time, you've had a lot of it in your body. You get pretty sensitive to changes and such. But I felt immediate results. Like the very first exercise we did, I felt what it did for me. It blew my mind, and I went, wow, this is really, really cool. And so Chris, you should know this, and you may or may not, if you've been, I don't know if you've been following I guess you have been following my email. It actually really, it influenced my practice in quite a huge and profound way, so that over the years, I've started to kind of develop my own set of stuff. It's by no means complete, like Egoscue, but it's little bits and pieces. Where can I? My background is also in teaching yoga and in martial arts, so I have kind of quite a bit of a movement alignment background, and little, just from looking at bodies and watching people move, little bits and pieces, and feeling in my own body, little bits and pieces will come out, so I can give people real targeted little things, as opposed to like a set. I might give them one, but the approach is a little bit different, whereas I'm doing more of a hands-on type of body work. You're doing it's more of like a self-sustained practice. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So for example, the folks who are going to be religious about doing Egoscue, they're never going to need to come into my office. But the ones who aren't, and you get a mix of them, right? So that's just.
I just had that experience with a client. I'd spoken to her and said, "Well, you're very random about getting your exercises, and you need to go to get some rolfing done." And she's been very excited about it. So.
Right, or basically, are you going to do the exercises or not? Well, I'm not feeling better, Chris. Why not? Well, have you been doing them? Well, no. But anyway, it's huge. And then there are people who are extremely dedicated who, I remember there was a guy recently who I gave a couple of exercises to, and he called me a couple of days later. He said, "Gosh, I'm in pain," and I thought, "Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. He's in pain. Like, this is exactly what I'm trying to get him out of. He probably hates me. He thinks I'm like the worst guy in the world." And and so I said, well, okay, calm down, to myself, right? Where's the pain? Well, he told me where the pain was. He said, "Oh, it's not the sciatic pain. It's this new pain." Where is it? Well, it turned out he was doing the exercises 25 times a day, and he had caused himself some delayed onset muscle soreness.
Holy cow. That's awesome. That's dedication right there.
Right? So
it'd be a little bit obsessive, but that's great.
Yeah, you'll probably be seeing him at some point. But anyway, so you see, over the last 13, 14, whatever it's been, years, would you say there's some common places that people are out of balance that you see, or what are those things? I'd be really interested to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's a lot of the same things that you're seeing as well, but the challenges we see is the dramatic amount of sitting that most people do. I would say probably 8 out of 10 of our people coming in are, strapped to desks or just not getting the activity levels that they need. And, this is a huge area that I know that we focus on, but I don't think the rest of the other modalities, so more conventional stuff, focuses on the thoracic spine and how round the upper back, how far out of position the shoulders get. And as soon as we move that upper spine and round it, where's the curve going on our lower back? Oh, it's gotten sucked clean out. And now we're left with a flat lower back and a round middle back. And to top it off, we've got really tight hips, glutes from sitting on them all day, hip flexors from being in that bent position. And then once we add the mix of, I've had this injury and I'm a golfer and we stir in a few other imbalances, we've got the perfect recipe for, not so good stuff. So, but the sitting is just, especially in our area up there in Orange County, there's commuting, there's working. It's pretty profound. And we even see it with our retired population. I had a client in yesterday, and I'm like, your back is kind of like a piece of stone. I'm walking 5 miles a day. I'm doing, I'm active. I said, are you sitting? He's like, yeah, I've got this wonderful chair I sit in, and kind of, he shows me, and he goes right into kind of a turtle position. And I'm like, great. Let's put a pillow behind your back. And here's the new sequence of exercises. So, Yeah,
Yeah, that's huge. The sitting is, and what's neat is there's starting to be more of an awareness that I've seen actually in the mainstream media articles on sitting, and it's the health effects of sitting, not just the structural stuff, but the the actual enzymatic and metabolic differences that happen when you're sitting that lead to things like cardiovascular disease and heart attacks and strokes and all kinds of different stuff. So it's huge. It's like what do they say? Sitting is the new obesity or something like that. It's like the new.
I think they've equated it to smoking, as bad as smoking.
Or smoking. That's what you're right. It was smoking. Yeah. Sitting is the new smoking. But it's true. It's true. We all sit.
It's great. Yeah.
So okay. So what about and the chair thing is huge. And like you mentioned, people come in and they literally look like a chair.
Yeah.
You watch them walk in and you say, "You have
slide
to
the chair over."
Right? Are you sitting a lot, sir? Well, yes. How did you know? Because it's obvious. You look like a chair. But and so then these people are trying to take it into athletics. So what happens then? What do you see with the athletes?
Yeah, and again, I'm sure that's what we're both seeing. But again, you take that posture with really tight hips, the dysfunctional hips that aren't working, one hip higher than the other, the no curve in the lower back and the upper back really round and tight. And then we need to get our activity because we've been sitting all day. So we go to the gym, we get out and we run. And obviously we're both all about movement and activity, but there has to be, going back to my initial, exposure to Egoscue, we've got to straighten before we get on to these activities. And it's just the area that most people lack in and don't have the skills they need to really get things in balance anyway. Maybe at best some people are doing some generic stretching type stuff, but that's where we see a huge amount of injuries come out of, whether the person has been an athlete for a long time and able to go, and then the sitting finally catches up, and the running, we start with a knee and then a hip, then a back, or they're trying to get back into activity and they're just pushing this body that is out of alignment with a lot of friction in the joints, a lot of soft tissue tension and irritation without even moving. And then we force that body into activity that, again, activity is fantastic, but sometimes, the balance scale can lean the other way in how much negative stuff we're doing to the body. So, and again, I'm sure that's probably a lot of what you're seeing over there as well.
For sure. Now, so what would you do, say, a middle-aged athlete, they've got to sit for their work, they obviously have some of them have a commute.
Yep.
They're probably stressed out all the time because they're running from place to place and trying to be an athlete. What kinds of things are you able to do for them, right? And maybe talk about some of your success stories there, and
awesome,
just so I can get a feeling of how things work. Because those are often great.
One guy in mind right now that we've been working with for over a year, that a big time runner, a lot of marathons, likes to cover. Just recently did another marathon. I think he's probably a 50, 60 mile a week runner. Is the CEO of two companies, travels tremendously overseas, and we're trying to feather. And now we're asking we're trying to get this body in balance and get it back to activity. So it was a pretty exciting challenge, I'll tell you that. So it starts with developing a practice, and again, targeting these compensations, starting the day with a sequence of exercises to get the body in balance. And if we're lucky enough, which this individual, Dave, was, he would get up at 4:30 in the morning. He would give us 45 minutes to an hour of Egoscue and then still have time to go out for his run. So, that was an amazing optimal setting of somebody hugely dedicated. What is also going to entail, we do talk about sitting position. So we've got to look at the negative stimulus and see if we can minimize it. So we will also talk to people about chair settings. We generally try to get the chair to do most of the work, the hip being a little higher than the knee in the chair as far as the seat placement. And a tilt forward in the seat pan allows the pelvis to go into a more neutral position and kind of balance the spine above. And then we also generally give short sequences. We don't want our people doing Egoscue 24/7, but if you can break up that negative stimulus throughout your day, if you can actually not sit stationary for 5-6 hours at a time, but every couple hours do a minute or two of exercise. And finally at the end of the day, we have some really relaxing passive exercises if people have downtime. Prep the body before you go to bed. We don't want to be in that turtle tight position when we're trying to let the muscles release and go to sleep. So we've got some real relaxing passive stuff too. Lay on your back, put your legs up, turn your head and watch a little TV for 10 minutes before you go to bed. So we really try to get in there and create unique situations for each of the clients, whatever they may be. But the biggest component is having what we call a pre, or even getting in the whole Egoscue exercise sequence before your activity. So we can align a balance and start to strengthen the body in the right position.
Yeah, which is humongous. And even the morning exercises is something I suppose I discovered on my own. And, for folks who, I think it's great that you're having people do it every day. And every person, I'm a little more selective with it, only because, again, I don't have this large repertoire of stuff. I have little bits and pieces. But I found that for me, my body, there's a sequence that I follow. It's a little bit different. I go through time periods where I do the same thing, and it'll change a little bit depending on what my body feels. But every day doing that, and then what I found, because for those who don't know, I have a kind of pretty severe scoliosis, and over the last 20 years through working with it, now I'm doing half Ironman and Ironman triathlons and things like that, and I'm not in pain from the scoliosis. So, but part of that is setting up in the beginning of the day when I get out of bed, because being in bed has its own stresses on your body. If it's certainly sleeping patterns, which could be changed, but they take time and all that. But getting up and doing those exercises in the morning, and then so for my scoliosis clients, I always give them something for the morning. Get up before you get out of bed, start the exercises, get out of bed, and you're talking at least, and I don't know what your protocols are like, but you're talking. I try and minimize it. So I tell them, look, you're talking like 2 minutes maximum. I try and keep it to that. Now, they can do more. I give them other things they can do, but 2 minutes maximum. So people will tend to try and actually think they can do 2 minutes. Okay, yeah, I can do 2. And you get up and you feel good. You start the day without that pain. Because if you start it with the pain, it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. Yep. So that's huge. That's so awesome. I really love how that's. I love all the. There's several things that are very similar. But are significantly different. I'd say Egoscue is significantly different from soft tissue work in that it's really, you're really having faith in the ability of the body to change simply by the way you use it. And that's huge.
Well put. I like that.
Yeah. So I'm totally stoked on what you guys do. Okay. So now, we're kind of, on the alternative side. What about more classical strength and conditioning? How would you say that Egoscue is not necessarily different, but what, where would the two fit together, say? Particularly for your athletes. That's kind of what we're addressing here, mostly athletes. So.
Excellent. Well, we the specificity of what we can do is pretty cool. So, we have some clients that may come in wheelchairs, and, we know we're going to be with them a long time. I've also had a fair amount of athletes coming in knowing that there's some misalignments and knowing that it's affecting their performance. And, haven't been able to develop the strength in certain areas. Comes to mind, I had a client that was a professional cyclist. But what we have to look for, again, we go back to the same basics of we have to straighten before we strengthen. But we can also take that person, and Egoscue has a whole other realm of fitness area type stuff, more body weight manipulation, but we certainly use a bench press, a one-arm row, pull-ups, push-ups. We do a lot of bear crawls, inchworms, Spider-Mans, and these are probably just all cartoon character for some, but they're actually body weight movements, and we can look at the workout in the same fashion that we look at just restoring someone's imbalances to get them out of pain. So where is the athlete having an issue? Great, they're not activating their psoas through the full range of motion. It's tight, it's tilting their pelvis forward. Perfect. We not only want that to lengthen and work more functionally, but we want it strong. This is one of the areas where we find, specifically with athletes and most people, the psoas muscle, just doesn't have the strength through the full range of motion. And we're usually seeing the thoracic spine be a factor, the tight lumbar spine being a factor, and the sitting and all these other components. So we will develop a strength and conditioning sequence in the same manner that we'll develop just a regular set of exercises, which we call a menu. So, and it's how I do most of my workouts. I've got 4 or 5 exercises that I sequence specifically in order for me, and I do push-ups, I do inchworms, I do lunges, I do some overhead presses, all in a manner to develop strength, to develop range of motion, to develop endurance. There's an anaerobic capacity to it. There's even a cardio capacity, and that can vary, depending on. We have different tools. If we're going with, a 300-pound lineman, then there's going to be another weight component that we can even add to something like that. But most of our clients do really well with a strong, conditioned body that works and is able to maintain their sport, their activity for the time period. And the biggest that comes to mind is running. As you know, with the mileage that you cover, maintaining the form without having to kill yourself to think about it the entire time is challenging. So if we can get the person extremely strong in a very functional position, and then they're taking the time to do their exercises before they run, on their days off, we're doing more strength and conditioning, Egoscue style workouts. Then we can deliver a better performing athlete. We can also compensate for any of the patterns that they may be developing. Again, you've got the biking aspect with the triathlons. Again, you're going to have tight hip flexors. We work on getting the hip, and again, that psoas more mobile, more able to get the person to bend down to the bars without having to go into significant rounding in the upper back, which also improves, the breathing capacity. I've had people have, I don't know if we've been measured, but just from feedback, 20-30% differences in just getting on a cardio capacity on a bike after we've strengthened and improved the range of motion in the hips and repositioned the thoracic spine so the diaphragm can actually function when a person's cycling. So,
for sure, yeah, breathing is huge, and you mentioned in cyclists, and that's actually a great point, because even I've been fit by some really top-notch bike fitters, and this is something I still struggle with on the bike is there's a certain level of discomfort over time. After you're on the bike I don't care who you talk to any cyclist who's riding, 100, 200 miles or whatever, and they're going to tell you at some point you want to get off the bike. You just don't want to be on there because there's a discomfort factor. And then with running, and so one, there's it seems to me there's obviously as you mentioned, there's a physical and kind of metabolic cardio and metabolic component to being able to breathe more easily. Then there's like the comfort component. And the third thing is, especially in a long race, is you're really talking about, your kind of mental component as well. Because if you're in pain, it's going to sap your mental strength to some extent. The longer you're in pain, the harder it is to stay in pain. And runners and triathletes are notorious, and any kind of like long distance endurance athlete. For example, I was talking to somebody, George Vargas yesterday, and he races solo races for 48 hours straight, 508 miles in Death Valley. He's got to be uncomfortable on the bike, So any percentage that you can improve that to that person late in the race is massive. It's massive.
Correct.
And sorry, go ahead.
Because that's one of the biggest things with our athletes. Again, we're not looking to just walk without pain. We want to be able to run, cycle, golf, whatever it might be. And that's where we just have to peel a lot more layers, and we have to get much deeper into and strengthen that body in just a completely balanced position, giving them the ability to maintain a proper form for long periods of time. So that's the fun stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can tell you firsthand, I'm not a super accomplished, endurance, athlete or anything, but certainly late in the race, I can tell you it's always a challenge form, and you're right, it is constantly in my mind from the middle of the race, on, if not from the beginning. It's form. It's like one mantra. When you're on the bike, then it's like form, eat, drink, but running particularly, I mean, if you don't pay attention to your form, you fall apart, and that's actually how I hold on. So if I didn't have to work so hard, perhaps I'd have more mental capacity to push and go a little faster. So that's huge. So people who are listening to this, this is something that, and if you're anybody who's listening to this who's an endurance athlete, is going to get that, late in the race pain, and that's where you fall apart. So okay. So let's see. We've talked about, we've covered a fair amount of ground here. So for folks who are interested in Egoscue, how can they get involved? Or, is there a way, do you have any way of working with people remotely, or is it pretty much they need to come to your office? Do you do seminars? Like, how does that work? What do you guys do?
Yeah. And I just want to hit on a little comment that you made earlier that I loved.
Sure.
In relation to your own stretching and activity, because it's something that we really try to help promote and develop with every one of our clients, and that is their own intuition, their own knowledge of their bodies, their own sense, their own awareness. I had the most perfect quote from a client I haven't seen in years was, we love chiropractors. He's like, I'm my own best chiropractor. He goes out, he does his activity, and he knows what to do to keep himself balanced, which is right where you were coming from, which was great in relation to your own body and everything. So, through the visits that were there with people, through the questioning that we have, through the feedback that they give us, there's just this awesome awareness that our clients are able to develop, so that they can take this and keep going with it. And that's the fun stuff. When you hear from a client 2 years later, or bump into someone who's like, my God, I'm running again, and I don't have any back pain, and I'm doing great, and thank you so much type thing. Not the thanks, but just, how we were able to help and instill that mindset, that awareness that, basically just reboot the body's ability to, fix itself and heal itself. So, but yeah, just wanted to hit on that because that was stuck in my mind, and I thought that was a great comment you had about your own practice. But we are
huge,
we're all over the place. Well, our particular clinic is in Laguna Hills, Orange County. But we have about 25 locations throughout the country. We do a lot of in-person therapy in our own clinic in Orange County. But we also have a very significant Skype and online presence. So I had a client in Northern California yesterday that was able to Skype in with and go through the whole evaluation and menu process with her. And we have an online process. I have clients in Alaska. Oh boy, I've had some East Coast, Europe. So with that, we're able to see clients. We just need postural photos. and some feedback from a client, and we're able to develop a sequence of exercises to help them start to correct the imbalances and get to where they want to be. So, but most of our business, I would say, is at our facility in Laguna Hills, and we're there 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday.
So that's great, and awesome. I love Skype. Skype is one of the best things.
Yeah.
It's made I don't actually do much Skyping sometimes for nutrition or whatnot because I'm more of a hands-on type of therapy. But you and I have a colleague at my clinic as well who Skypes all over the world, and yeah, I mean, wow, how cool is that? Back in the day, you were just stuck with what you could find in the yellow pages, and now,
completely.
Yeah, I have one friend, endurance athletic friend, who does a very particular technique that nobody else does, and people fly in from all over the world, and they find them on the internet. It's just amazing.
Cool.
So more power to you. So so if folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can go to our website. We're at Egoscue.com, and then we're a subset off of that with the Orange County facility. The best way would probably be to reach us by telephone. We're at 949-716-7817. We do free consultations. In fact, we start most of our clients in that manner. We want to do a free, full evaluation of the client, of the symptom, of the postural disparities, fully making sure that, A, we can help and fully understand what's going on, and then B, that it makes sense to them, and it's something that they want to commit the time and energy and funds to do. So that's free. We do, 30 to 45 minutes with each and every client that comes in. Sometimes it's a little longer. Sometimes it's a little bit shorter. All of our visits are one-on-one. So we're working with clients from anywhere from probably a minimum of an hour to I've had a client in for 4 hours. So we have some exercises that take a long time. But generally an hour to an hour and a half with most of our clients.
Wonderful, wonderful. Good stuff. I'm going to actually have to make it down there again because now that we're talking.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And I'm a totally different place now in training and all that. So, but I want to thank you, Chris, for coming today and sharing this with folks, because I think that as widespread as Egoscue is, it's still relatively under the radar for most folks. And when I mention it, some have heard of it, and the ones who have usually are pretty positive on it. But it's like the work that I do. A lot of people just don't know about it. And
right.
And it's so beneficial, and it's not so it's useful to your entire lifestyle. When you're doing Egoscue, it's like it's going to help you in every aspect of movement, whether it be athletics, whether it be just day-to-day living, whether it be getting out of a wheelchair, whatever it is. So I want people to be aware of this because it's such a fabulous method. And you guys down there, you're doing awesome work. So keep up the great work, and
one more thing I wanted to mention there, Manny. Those of you who are listening to this and mention our talk here today, we're going to do half off of the first visit for those people coming in.
Oh, great! That's awesome. Awesome. So make sure and take advantage of that, guys. It's one of those things that doesn't come around often, and when you hear a good offer like that, you want to take advantage of it. So get on in and see Chris. I guarantee you're going to get some benefit out of the free consult.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll get benefit out of the consult, alone. It's like that alone is especially if you're an athlete. So once again, thanks. And this is Manny Aragon from the Rolf Workshop Center for Structural Performance signing out. Thanks, everybody, for listening today, and stay healthy and fit. All the best.
room for cream?